Hey guys, it's Cory from CoryBakerFilmmaker.com, and I just saw Ready Player One, directed by Steven Spielberg and written by Zach Penn and Ernest Cline, with the original book by Ernest Cline. So I saw this flick at Pacific Glendale. Had a great time. They're seeing the Black Panther there twice. I just really wanted to get back. I think it's a really cool theater and worth the drive if you're from outside of the area. On to Ready Player One. The story basically revolves around a future world in the 2040s where everyone spends their time in a virtual reality known as the Oasis, which was a creation of this legendary computer savvy and media obsessed Halliday. And we follow Wade, or Parzival, as everyone tries to find the 3 Easter eggs, the keys, which will allow ownership of Oasis. Because when Halliday died, he said to whoever found the 3 keys would become the rightful owner of the Oasis, and everyone in real life basically sells everything they can to live as meager as possible so that they have as much in the digital Oasis world in order to try and become the big winner. It'd be like if you could find 3 iPods and you become owner of Apple. It's really about it. So first thing I wanted to say before we got too far into any kind of review of Ready Player One, nobody seems to understand how Apple worked back when it started. Steve Jobs is not the visionary tech genius that everyone thinks he is. And anytime you are trying to say that Mark Rylance's character of Halliday is the Steve Jobs of this situation, and that Ogden Moreau is the Wozniak of this situation, have no fucking clue what the hell is going on. Wozniak was the technical, creative genius of Apple, and Steve Jobs just yelled at people. So, if anybody was Steve Jobs in this movie, it would have been Ben Mendelsohn's character Sorrento, because he was just sort of like the conniving for-profit owner of the separate company that the company that's trying to take over Oasis essentially by winning the keys. But Halliday is definitely Wozniak, because it's pretty clear, and any review that says that Halliday was Jobs you need to turn it down, shut the fuck up, or put in the comments, or like tweet like, this guy doesn't know anything about fucking tech. Secondly, I think I said something like this before with the review for The Post, which is that Spielberg puts enough talented people around him and has his own ability so finely tuned that no matter how good or bad a movie may be, it has a higher ceiling and floor than almost any other director's movie. So I mean, like, even though The Post was a bad Spielberg movie, it's still a good movie because Spielberg can't make a movie that's like incredibly bad. There's too many capable people around him to allow anything to be too bad. And I think there's a bit of that going on with Ready Player One as well. I almost wonder if Spielberg might have been a slight detriment to making the best film possible, because while the visuals were stunning and while the Oasis world felt very animated, it wasn't as visionary as I would have imagined stepping into it. So, for example, like, I think that if you would have take like the Wachowskis, like when they did Speed Racer, that was a complete mindfuck to a lot of people. And even though Speed Racer wasn't very good, they turned this world into something incredible, and we had never seen anything like that, and it was just mind-blowing. Now, I'm not saying you gotta give Ready Player One to the Wachowskis, because I'm sure Spielberg just bought it out and has been sitting on it for a while. But there are a good number of directors that I think, if you would have put at the helm of this movie, would have done a more enlightening view of it. Like, off the top of my head, Edgar Wright, just right up top. After seeing Baby Driver, I think Edgar Wright could have made a better version of Ready Player One than Spielberg did. But that being said, this movie is not in any way bad. It's just not fully realized, I guess. It just feels like it could have been better, and that is a little bit upsetting to me. On to the performances. Number one, Mark Rylance and Simon Pegg were both incredible. They both completely fell into their roles. And even though it was they weren't on screen a ton, they had very meaty roles, and I didn't even really notice that it was them. Simon Pegg, for sure, like, for whatever reason, I feel like I knew what Simon Pegg looked like, but I didn't realize it was him until the credits, which is always a thumbs up to the actor being able to perform without me noticing him. Ben Mendelsohn was really great, even though it seemed like he probably got a note somewhere along the line that said, play this a little bit more, like, socially awkward, a little bit more nervous, like you're a tech CEO. But the in-between decision, the decision to make him more in the middle between a, like, strong, no-nonsense CEO and, like, one of the more passive tech leaders that we have, didn't really find, like, that the middle ground didn't really work as well, but his performance was good enough that I didn't really think about it that much. It's a very subtle thing. And everybody else was really good too. I mean, like, I think Tye Sheridan was good. Olivia Cooke was really good. I'm sure that there was probably more TJ Miller, maybe TJ Miller in the real world, that got cut out of this movie, but I didn't really... I actually kind of would have preferred it wasn't TJ Miller, because it just made me think of problems that TJ Miller's having in his own life, which is sort of a detriment to hiring an actor who might have trouble in the real world. At the end of it all, I really, like, I enjoyed the flick. It all sat well with me at the end. I was happy I went to see it. It was a visual feast for the eyes, but it just felt like there was so much missing in this whole ordeal. Like, so the love story between Parzival and Artemis just felt kind of like shoved through. I mean, she's the first time they actually meet at, like, Aish's lair, and they're trading barbs back and forth about what Holiday liked. It was, nice and sweet, and she sort of had the upper hand, and then he said he loved her, and it was like a moment that just sort of fucking sat there like a dead bird, like a dog just brought in a dead bird and dropped it. You're like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to do with that? And I'm sure there's some absurdly long director's cut of this movie, or, like, at least an absurdly long plan to have a director's cut of this movie where all that love story stuff was cut out, because I can't imagine that they would allow him to do, like, a 4-hour cut of this movie with all the expensive CG that would have gone into it. But maybe there is. Maybe we'll get a DVD where we get to see that there was more of a fully developed love story that doesn't feel shoehorned in. But it just felt like it was so quick to get us to the next part. And then, so, as I said, it's sort of about finding the Easter eggs, the 3 keys in the Oasis. And the first one is a car race, and you get to see the whole race play out, and it's very stunning. And then, I don't want to give away the whole thing, but, like, the second key comes along, and it felt like we have to get as quick as humanly possible to the third key, and there was no room to breathe. There was no sort of setting up the tension of, like, here we are. It just sort of like, quickly, third key, let's get to the space. let's figure out where it is and let's get to it. It just felt, I felt like for all the times that we spent in like a long 20-minute action scene, maybe 3 minutes could have been cut out at any given point in time and been put towards plot, and it would have felt more satisfying. But it's, yeah, it's just it just felt like this movie was on Red Bull and had to just get to the next thing. Like, I don't got time to sit here. Now I'll say that I'm sort of at the young end of the sweet spot for a lot of the references in this movie, so everything sat with me right, because a lot of the things that they show are things that most people would have at least a casual understanding of. But none of the reference points bothered me. I enjoyed seeing them. It just, there was a part of having everything shoved into this movie that felt a little bit much, and would have been nicer to maybe dial it back just a smidge. I know that for some people the references in this movie are going to be everything, but I didn't need everything. So like at one point, like Chucky shows up, and they make like a very big, like, oh my god, it's Chucky, and like I was just saying, at this point I'm sort of burned out, and to have a big like introductory moment. I mean, like Chucky to me isn't like, he's a very important figure in horror films, yes, but like I don't know if Chucky is like, it felt like they gave Chucky the moment that, you know, Mario could have had, because Mario is more of a transcendent figure in nerd culture, and I feel like if you would have just, oh my god, it's fucking Mario, and he's shooting fireballs or something like that, that would have felt more worthy of that sort of setup. But I mean, none of it bothered me. Most of it, to be honest, is kind of shoved in the background. So you get to, you know, if you like Master Chief, for instance, like Master Chief is in this movie, but it's not like there's a whole 30 seconds dedicated to Halo, like right here in the middle of it. So don't take any of the references like too serious, because it's all in there to sort of make it feel like the nerd culture, like to further the fact that Halliday was obsessed with the things he was obsessed with, and people are obsessed with the things that Halliday was obsessed with because they want to win the game. So a big, huge part of this is just shoving it with as many things that Halliday would have liked. And at the end of the day, the people who went to go see this movie, who were really excited about it, probably liked all those things as well. One final thing, I really appreciate the time that we spent in the real world, in like a non-CGI world, and I really kind of wish there was a little bit more of that, just because it felt, at a certain point when you're watching so much CG, it feels like, why does this have to be a movie? Like, why couldn't this have just been a video game that you play and has all these references? But then obviously you would never, if you didn't have Spielberg, you wouldn't have gotten half of these references. So being able to say Steven Spielberg is directing a movie and he would like to have, you know, he'd like to have Atari in it, and Atari goes like, oh yeah, fuck, a Steven Spielberg movie. Like, I mean, if I tried to make this movie, I wouldn't have been able to get the rights to half these characters. So it's sort of the way it is, but games are fun to play by yourself. They're not as fun to watch other people play. And I know there's going to be a bunch of people who talk about like watching people play games on YouTube and stuff like that, but a lot of that is about the personality of the person who's talking about the game, and you become more associated with the people who play the games, and not so much the watching somebody else play the game, because that sort of has like a very limited retention. Is that a new high score? Or is it leaderboard time? This is the second time that I've seen a movie at the Pacific Glendale 18. And moving on to the movie leaderboard. I don't know about Ready Player One. I enjoyed it. I loved the time I spent with it. But then it's one of those If I told you that Michael Jordan was going to come back in his prime and play one more game against LeBron James in his prime, everyone would be so excited. Everyone would be like, oh my God, I can't wait, can't get the ticket. And then if Jordan scored 20 points, people would be like, wow, what the hell is this? Like, I was expecting classic vintage 50-point Jordan, and I only got 20-point Jordan. But you still saw Jordan, and he was still fun, he was still good. He was just not everything you hoped and dreamed about. And it's one of those things, like, when it's not everything that you hope and dream about, and it's still good, but it feels less satisfying. So I guess I will give Ready Player One a 7.6. Again, a lot of fun. Go check it out because you'll enjoy it. But it's not awards fair. It's not a transcendent film that we're all going to remember forever. And I never read the book, but it seems like the book sort of had like a touch and go grasp on the people who would be reading it. So yeah, but go check it out. It's worth seeing. Definitely go see it. I don't think nobody will talk about Ready Player One like they'll talk about Jaws, and that's sort of the disappointing part of this whole thing. Anyway, that's it for me. If you want more, you can go to my website, CoryBakerFilmmaker.com, Facebook.com/CoryBakerFilm, and at LegendsCB5 on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. If you like the review, please give it a like. If you want to subscribe, you can do that somewhere in this general area. And please share it. If you thought that I gave a nuanced take on this film, then let other people know, because that's how more people end up watching me, and ... profit. So that's it. If you don't mind, I'm gonna go play PlayStation for way more hours than I should.